Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. I am HiFi-Dawson and this is the SNOWSKY Wind Pro. This is a semi-open on-ear wired headphone and I'm going to tell you all about it in this video. So let's get into it. Before going any further, full disclosure, FiiO did provide me with the Wind Pro for this review, but as always, all thoughts and opinions are my own, and FiiO had no say or input into the contents of this review. So, first looking at the specs here. This is a relatively inexpensive on-ear headphone at $25 US. It is a wired semi-open on-ear headphone, and the semi-open part will become evident when I talk about the build quality and sound design of the headphone in a little bit here. It uses a 40mm dynamic driver. It is very easy to drive at an impedance of 16 ohms and a sensitivity of 100 decibels per milliwatt. It's very light at 77 grams, and the cable is non-detachable, has a 3.5mm termination, and has inline controls and a microphone. All pretty straightforward for a retro aesthetic headphone. In the box, you get the box. You get two spare foam pads, and you get the manual, and of course you get the Wind Pro headphone with the cable attached to it. These are just pretty standard foam pads that we've seen on other, on the original Wind, on the FiiO EH11, that kind of stuff. So, they're pretty decent. They offer a good enough amount of padding, and they're just overall pretty nice. And as far as what you get in the box with the Wind Pro, I think it's pretty respectable considering it's $25. If I'm going to be really picky, maybe it should have come with a very basic drawstring bag. Toss this in, considering this is supposed to be a portable headphone. But again, at $25, it's really hard to complain about that. So looking more at the now actual design of the Wind Pro here, as you can see, it has it does have the very retro aesthetic, sort of like reminiscent of the COS Porta Pros, that kind of thing. Has a metal headband here with adjustable ear cups here with, as you can see. And you can probably hear the notches going. It does say left and right on the inside, although it should not be very difficult to understand how to put this on like this. Overall, the design is pretty basic, pretty standard. There's a good enough amount of swivel to the ear cups here, given the restrictions of this sort of form factor. Again, the cables are connected permanently so that you cannot change these cables, which is kind of understandable. I like the orange pads on here because they add to the, they give a nice contrast to the silver. But they also just, look nice and, pretty cool, flashy, but not too flashy. I do like that. The faceplate looks premium, even though this is all plastic here, with a SNOWSKY logo on it. Yes, there we go, on both sides. Overall, pretty nice with that. The cable it's okay. It's not the greatest kind of cable. As you can see, it's kind of a tangly mess. Here is the termination, just a 3.5mm termination. Yeah, there we go. And as I stated before, you do get a inline remote with microphone here. So there's the microphone hole. This is the remote, and if I just turn it this way, you can see the volume up, volume down, and play pause for this. So, and if you have a device that supports inline controls, this works very well. It's kind of nice to have. I do like that, although I wish this was a little bit further down just for my own personal taste or preference for when I wear a headphone. But otherwise, the cable's fine. It's what it is. Maybe it would have been nice to be able to change it out, but it's very low, it's not going to get in your way kind of thing. And there's no microphonics either when you're wearing this. So from that standpoint, it's pretty good. Given this is like an all plastic, besides the metal band here, it's basically an all plastic design for headphone, and the build construction is pretty good. It's not creaking really too much. There's just a jiggling from the ear cups here, but otherwise not too bad. The pads are easy enough to get on and off. You do have to really like kind of, without, if you don't want to rip it, you have to really like kind of take a little bit of time to get it on, which is why I'm not going to show it on this video because it is slightly a pain to do that. But otherwise, no, you have spare pads, which is nice, and they're also relatively cheap to pick up, like third-party ones or spare ones. So it doesn't. So overall, this headphone doesn't feel luxurious, but at $25, it really doesn't need to be. Most of the budget, I think, has gone into keeping this lightweight and also into the sound quality, which we'll talk about in a short bit here. In terms of actual comfort, again, this is like very light. The ear pads offer just enough cushioning to them so that they're not too harsh on your ears. This headphone design, I think I just need one notch on each side and then it fits me perfectly. So whether you have a smaller head or a larger head, this should fit you. So I don't think there should be any concerns there. Very low clamping pressure, which I do appreciate, and the pads, because they're, you know, mesh, or they're like foam like this and they have a good mesh to them, they're very breathable, so your ears aren't getting sweaty. And the swiveling on the ear cups does a little bit help to conform to your ears a little bit. So overall, I would say it's pretty comfortable. I do find after about an hour, I have this pressure that's sort of, you know, kind of directed on my pinna after about an hour, and then it becomes uncomfortable and I have to take them off or readjust it a bit. But otherwise, pretty good. Stability is also good if I'm walking outside or walking around home. It's pretty stable on my head. So I wear glasses, also works well with glasses. So overall, pretty good comfort and stability for that. Because these are on-ear headphones, sound leakage is a thing. It's not crazy, but there is obviously some sound leakage, especially if you're playing music at higher volumes. There is very little passive isolation going on here, so do not expect outside sounds to be blocked. This also does feature sort of a semi-open design, so it does have vents that actually it's basically like having like a semi-open back headphones, you know. There are openings and vents on the driver assembly in here that allow sound to go in and out. And because of that, you will hear a little bit more outside noise, and also because of that, it does contribute to the sound leakage a bit too. On the plus side, it does make these more breathable, so there's no heat buildup, as I mentioned before. So that vent or damping system has its advantages and it has its disadvantages, but I think overall it's a positive rather than a minus. But again, just depends what you want. Power and source pairing, as I mentioned during the specs section, these are not really demanding headphones, nor should they be for this price and for the intended use case. 16 ohms at 100 decibels per milliwatt, very easy. You don't really need a crazy, you don't need an amp. You just need a basic dongle DAC or just a basic, you know, any basic thing with a 3.5 millimeter connection will drive this perfectly. Just to bring the point home here, I'm going to bring over 3 different devices. So this is probably off by now, but we'll power this guy back on. Come on, Echo Nano. There you go. I have an intentional purpose for bringing out these 3 specific devices. So first we'll go with the Echo Nano here. Obviously a SNOWSKY product. Retro aesthetic, although the black and red isn't kind of retro-ish. The pen-like MP3 player aesthetic definitely is. And, you know, as far as things go, it's kind of a nice pairing because it's very portable. And this drives it very well. So it's a little bit loud right now, but I have it at about 45. So generally I'm listening to it on here at about volume of 40 on low gain. Don't need anything crazy here. And I'm just also going to show you this. So this is currently playing a song, Personal Jesus by Depeche Mode. And I'm actually just gonna use this here to pause it and play it and do the volume. Just to show you, the inline control actually does work. Ironically, this of the 3 devices, this is the only one where the inline controls do work. I don't know why the Sony doesn't support it, and I guess the iPod doesn't also support it necessarily. Maybe just with specific ones, but again, works very well on the Echo Nano as well as the Echo Mini and the Echo. So that's nice to see. I'm just gonna pause it again here. Unplug this guy, plug this guy into the iPod here, listen to some talk. It's kind of loud. There we go. So the Echo Nano drives this very well. This iPod Classic 7th Gen also drives the Wind Pro very easily, as you can see. So I'm using it at a volume, it's usually about there. I can actually hear it. I won't turn it up anymore because I don't want the video to get have a music strike against it, but basically very easy to drive and you won't have any problems. And actually I do like the iPod pairing, kind of feels natural in this way. And then of course I brought the Sony A306 here because it does have this cassette tape aesthetic to it, so let's do this. Even though this song is definitely much newer than cassette, cassette tapes and stuff like that, but Mark Knopfler, Back on the Dance Floor, sounds good on here, and the volume I'm using at about 50. This is really loud, so I'm usually around 55 on this thing. The A306 is not a powerful digital audio player, like it doesn't have a lot of power output, so this pairing really good too. All these are really portable pairings, really good, that I personally actually do use. So sounds good on all these, and I just wanted to show you how easy it is to drive these headphones because it is ridiculously easy. And yes, even the USB Apple dongle will drive this just fine from your phone. No worries about that. So for $25, very easy to drive. And I would not buy anything expensive to drive a $25 headphone. So going now into the sound quality and the overall sound signature of the Wind Pro here. So it is I guess it's interesting. FiiO / SNOWSKY, they say this is a neutral yet warm headphone, but to me this sounds like neutral bright with basically a mild V-shaped presentation with some energy to it. Sub bass is actually a little bit better than I expected. It's relatively lean in the mid bass and the lower mids, but fairly forward in the upper mids. It's got an energetic treble, which brings that energetic presentation to it. The treble is very airy and it's open, so that gives you a nice open presentation. Has actually a fairly wide soundstage, but the note weight is relatively light, I would say. Briefly talking about the bass now. So sub bass is a pleasant surprise, as I said. So it has better extension than I actually thought it would for on-ear headphone like this with no isolation, essentially. What I mean is the sub bass is actually audible, which you wouldn't expect. But there is a rather steep roll-off associated with it, which you would assume with a headphone like this. But of all of these types of headphones, the sub-bass extension is better than average, I would say. I wouldn't mistaken the extension for quality though. This has limited bass texture and very limited bass physicality to it. Again, the note presentation is pretty lightweight, so you're not going to get those visceral impacts. And the bass can really flatten out if you got a very busy track. Drum kicks, they have impact, but they don't have that weight associated with it, so you're not really feeling it, you're more just hearing it. Bass guitars, they do sound somewhat hollow on the Wind Pro, and lower piano notes, they don't have that richness to them that you would expect, and that weight, that body to them. So overall for the bass, I would say surprisingly good sub-bass extension, but pretty mediocre bass texture. The mid-range is fairly clean and open, but you don't get a lot of that lower mid-range warmth, hence because of the bass. So the strengths of the mid-range, you know, the acoustic guitars, they sound, you know, pretty convincing and they have a good amount of, you know, texture to them. Strings and other acoustic instrumentation, they do have good clarity as well. So it's very easy to pick them out in a track. Vocals are a little bit more forward, which I do appreciate because I'm a mid-centric listener. And there's good separation on, I would say, not busy tracks. So if your track is not terribly layered or busy, then there's a lot of good, then separation performs very well here. As far as weaknesses go, mainly for me, vocals are kind of the problem area. They tend to sound thin. And I would say female vocals sound a little bit metallic too. Male vocals lack body and weight because you don't get any sort of presence or warmth from the mid bass. Female vocals, going back to female vocals, they can sound maybe a little bit edgy at times. So like those like s, t, and ch, you know, consonants, if they're very prominent in a song, they can sound just a little bit aggressive, especially at higher volumes. So overall, the mid-range, while performing decently in the mid to upper mid-range, the lower mid-range has some issues, and then those specific female vocal issues with the upper mid-range, which leads us into the treble. I think the treble might be the most divisive part of this tuning. It's energetic, it's crisp, it's airy. I would say it's also lively. So strong presence from like cymbals and strings and, you know, electric guitars, especially in the higher notes. It does contribute heavily to all that perceived sense of detail and openness. The problem is that it can sound sibilant quite often, especially like, you know, snare drum attacks are quite sharp. If you have tracks, like I said, where the vocals are having those ts, ch, t consonants, they tend to be over-exaggerated a little bit. And this leads to a lot of fatigue with bright recordings. So the treble energy it gives you some resolution, but at the cost of the sibilance and that sort of edginess, I guess. So the Wind Pro kind of does sound detailed because it is bright, but I think it's more maybe a little bit maybe artificially bright or artificially detailed rather than actually detailed. So I'm not a huge fan of this treble because I am on the more treble sensitive side. But I think I think the treble does work well for, you know, a lot of pop tracks, especially older pop tracks, some classic rock, and some modern rock, and I would say also some electronic music too. The technical performance actually for me is kind of a standout for this. It has an impressively wide soundstage. It sounds very spacious. And I think that has to do with the semi-open design of the drivers or of the ear cup construction. It doesn't sound very boxed in, which is kind of nice. Imaging and like instrument separation, I would say, is average to good. So imaging is good. On very simple recordings, everything is separated very well. Vocals and acoustic tracks, they have a lot of space. Dense tracks kind of expose the limitations though of this. So if you have a lot going on, multiple instruments, multiple singers, and also some electronic music going on all at the same time, so a very busy track, kind of all sounds like it blends together and it's hard to really pick anything out. And it just sounds like the sound is kind of coming at you rather than you're immersed in it. So don't expect like open back levels of expansiveness, and don't expect like a huge amount of, you know, performance on being able to pick out the different layers of instruments and vocals, but overall it does a pretty decent job. Dynamics are pretty average, and what I mean by dynamics is how musical the headphone sounds. It's not particularly punchy or physical, it's more focused on openness, and Because of the light note weight, you definitely don't get that presence too often, but micro detail is pretty respectable for $25. In the end, it's simply just average here. So like I mentioned before, genres that pair well with this headphone, the Wind Pro. So pop, because of the energetic vocals and crisp production. Jazz also does work pretty well. I like acoustic music and folk music on here. Female vocals, as long as it's not a very dense recording or not very sibilant recording. I do actually appreciate classical music on here too, mostly because of the spaciousness and because string instruments, they have a lot of presence too. I would say, like, if you're going to listen to a lot of like hip hop or EDM, rock, metal, and then anything that's sort of like deep male vocal focused, you're going to have more of a mixed experience on the Wind Pro. It's not going to sound bad, it's just going to sound like it's lacking something. So who is the SNOWSKY Wind Pro for? It's for someone who's just wanting an expensive wired pair of headphones that actually sound pretty decent for that price. Someone who likes this like retro aesthetic, and also who prefers this type of comfort. Because there are people who do like on-ear headphones. I'm not a person who likes on-ear headphones. They a little bit bother me too much because I wear glasses and they tend to press against my ears a little bit, but these are pretty decent actually, all things considered for me. But again, on-ear headphones I'm not really that big of a fan of personally. If you have a very underpowered sources, very lower powered digital audio players or a basic dongle DAC or something like that, this might interest you because of how easy it is to drive. Maybe you want something just ultra light. These are very ultra light headphones, so that's also a very, might be for you. If you don't like IAMs, this is a good choice. This is not for bass heads or even for treble heads, in my opinion, because the treble doesn't give you the detail to go along with the presence. And obviously the bass is more sub-bass focused rather than mid-bass. If you are treble sensitive, this is not going to be for you. If you want good isolation, or if you want a detachable cable, this is also not going to be for you. If you want, thicker or warm vocals, or if you prioritize bass texture and slam, not for you. If you want like something that's going to be like I'll call it like a giant killer, so something that performs much better than the price, it's probably not for you. I think this performs just a little bit better than the price suggests. So before getting into my final thoughts about the Wind Pro here, I'm just going to bring over these headphones. So this is the FiiO EH11. These are Bluetooth headphones. These supposedly somewhat inspired some of the decisions made for the Wind Pro, and not that there's a huge difference in sound quality between them, but the EH11, it has a more warm and relaxed and maybe more forward mid-range tuning than the Wind Pro, but overall they're very similar on a lot of levels, which means neither is bad. These are a little bit more expensive, I think at like $40. I'll have to look that up later. I do have a full review of these on my website on HiFi-Oasis.com, but I just thought I would mention that and show them off because they're very similar in a lot of ways, and it's basically the Bluetooth version of the Wind Pro in this way. And I think both of these headphones, both the EH11 and this Wind Pro, I think they will suit people who are looking for that retro style, on-ear style headphone. So just to sum up my thoughts on the Wind Pro here, I think for $25, I think this sounds really good. I think that it doesn't sound like it's trying to perform better than that price. It's not a like giant killer in that regard, but they do sound very good. And I'll be honest, like for $25, it's hard to complain about any one thing. Comfort's pretty good. The cable itself with the inline controls is decent enough. You get spare pads, to go along with this, and you get, the orange ones, and you get the kind of grayish ones here. It's very easy to drive, and no matter what source you're using, it's gonna actually perform the same. which is good because overall I think it does sound pretty decent. If you're like coming as an audiophile, don't expect that audiophile level performance. It's still going to be a semi-open on-ear headphone that lacks any, sort of isolation. So you're not going to get any bass slam or physicality. You're going to get a little bit more sibilant sound because of the treble energy and because of the openness going on there. But I understand the tuning choices that SNOWSKY made, and I, in a way, can even appreciate it. So even though on-ear headphones aren't really for me, I think if you are looking for on-ear headphones, you definitely should give the SNOWSKY Wind Pro a look, because for $25, it kind of doesn't get any better than that. You have to step up in price a lot more to get on-ear headphones that will sound, at least decently like this. So that is my review of the SNOWSKY Wind Pro. I hope you guys enjoyed it. There'll be links to this and to my website in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please click like and subscribe to my channel to help me out a bit more to review more audio stuff. And thanks for watching. I will see you in the next video.